Easter Sunday is a day of great joy every year. And this is especially true this year because of all that we have endured over this last year. With all of the rises in COVID cases around Europe at the moment, the future is still uncertain and nothing is guaranteed. And so for those who are able to, it is therefore with great joy that we are able to celebrate together this year and hold a service in church. Because being together is something that we have all lost, whether that is as a church community or with our friends and our family. And we have all had to learn how important being with others is. If we stop and think about what joy means, we know that joy comes in many shapes and sizes. Some joy is very short-lived. So for example, last Sunday morning, I was woken up because who needs an alarm clock when you have very small children? I was woken at 7:15, and for a short moment, I thought that I had had an extra hour in bed, only to remember that the clocks had moved forward. This joy didn't last for very long. Other joy is longer lasting. So perhaps this week we have had the joy of finally being able to sit in the garden with friends and family. That's exactly what we did on Monday evening. Once again, doing that which used to be a very regular occurrence. Perhaps joy for you is an activity. And perhaps this is something that you have been able to do during lockdown. So for example, going to the beach and seeing a sunrise. Or maybe your activity has been put on hold for a while. First thing on Monday morning, whilst I was taking Toby to nursery, I saw a full car park at Wilton Golf Club. A lot of people were clearly very keen to return to their hobby that they have missed out on. For Mary Magdalene, her grief was overwhelming. It was now the third day since her close friend had died, and all of her hope was gone. A natural thing to do, therefore, was to attend the place where Jesus was buried. Given that she knew that a large stone had been rolled over the entrance to the tomb, she was no doubt expecting to sit outside of the tomb and to reflect on the wonderful memories that she shared with Jesus. This Jesus who gave her dignity when so many other people didn't. And given that she attended whilst it was still dark, no doubt she hadn't slept that much that night. And so when Mary arrived and discovered that the stone had been rolled away and that Jesus' body wasn't there, her reaction was very natural. She ran, she told Simon Peter and the other disciple that, and I quote, "They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Already filled with grief at the loss of her Lord, Mary must have been beside herself, not knowing how to react. And naturally, the disciples wanted to see the tomb for themselves, and so they ran and they took a look. Now, let's just stop for a moment and think about who these two disciples were. So we've got Simon Peter. This is Simon Peter, the rock on who Jesus would build his church. So we know who that is, very famous character. And then the other disciple is described quite literally as the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. So who is this person? Well, there are a couple of major theories about who this might be. The first one is that it's John the Apostle, or the second one is that the other disciple is the reader of the gospel. In other words, we are invited to put ourselves into this story. And so we are therefore invited to take a look into the tomb ourselves and see the empty tomb, to see that Jesus is not there, for he has risen. It is also important to know that according to the Jewish law, that's the Jewish law outside of the Bible, but the law by which they were governed, the testimony of a woman was not counted in court. And in significant cases, 2 witnesses were required. And so here we see this in action. So a woman discovers the empty tomb, but her witness is not valid, and therefore two men run to the tomb to see what has happened. And the fact that a woman was the first one to discover the body, or the lack of body, says everything about the way Jesus approached and treated women, offering them dignity and a place of honour above and beyond the society at the time. And so the two disciples, discovering the linen wrappings that Jesus' body was wrapped in, would have confirmed what Mary had told the two disciples, but also, I would assume, would add to their confusion. Well, so, you run to the tomb, you see just the linens lying there, and so the question probably running through their mind was, who has taken Jesus? And if he was dead, why would anybody do this? Why would anybody take the body of Jesus away? Now, significantly at this point, nobody had realized that the resurrection of Jesus had taken place, and that this is, of course, what God had planned. And that was until true joy entered into the story. Now, presumably, Mary stayed at the tomb quite a while, as the other disciples had returned home. And Mary's true joy began as soon as she realized that she wasn't talking to the gardener, but she was talking to Jesus. Such was the closeness between Mary and Jesus that she realized that it was Jesus by the way he said, Mary. Not only is Mary the first person to see the empty tomb, but she is also the first person to see the risen Jesus. Following this conversation with Jesus, she returns and she tells the disciples that I have seen the Lord. Not just an empty tomb, but I have seen the Lord. I have seen the risen Jesus. And therefore Jesus is the personification of joy. He brings joy into the most hopeless of situations. This is what Jesus did in the first century, and it is what Jesus still does today. There is no circumstance in which the presence of Jesus cannot bring joy. Not joy of a lion, or seeing friends and family again, or the joy of a favourite hobby. Joy that surpasses anything else that we could know. Not a short-term lifting of the spirits, but a deep joy that changes everything. The joy that Mary felt on that day must have been so overwhelming, and the realization of what was going on must have taken some time to sink in. The resurrection of Jesus changed Mary's life forever and gave her an eternal joy. I wonder how the resurrection has changed your life. The joy of the presence of Jesus ultimately gives us hope of a life with him beyond the grave, that not even death can separate us from him. We can have a joy in that no matter what life throws at us, he has a future for us, that we can know that in the darkest of situations, the light of Jesus is with us. Because Jesus not only rose from the dead, but he also says to Mary, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. In other words, he will soon be over everything, not limited to his physical presence on earth. And this is why the resurrection, the ascension, and Pentecost are all significant and vital parts of this story of joy that must be taken as a whole. This year may have not felt very joyful, but as Christians, we have a joy that goes way beyond the temporary circumstances of our lives. The Jesus who says Mary in the garden in a way that she recognizes is the same Jesus who knows all of our names and all of our circumstances. And so this Easter, take a moment. Take a moment to give thanks for the joy of the resurrection and the presence of Jesus with us. Like Jesus was to Mary, may Jesus be the joy in our darkness.